What's up YouTube? Small Guy 32 here, and today's video we'll be ranking every single one of the starting point guards in a fantasy basketball tier list. I was also thinking, maybe there should be another YouTube intro, maybe a community name. So if you guys got ideas for a good community name, I might use it, so leave it down in the comments below. As always, if you enjoy this sort of content, make sure to like the video and go ahead and click that subscribe button. But yeah, without further ado, let's just get right into the tier list. So the first guy we have is Peyton Pritchard of the Boston Celtics. Peyton Pritchard is a great player. He specializes in 3 points. The efficiency isn't really there, but he can assist, he can rebound. Personally, I still struggle to put him in the greats. We did expect him to be a lot better this season, especially after they shipped Drew Holiday out and Tatum is gone and he stepped into that starting role. However, he's been a little bit underwhelming. However, I wouldn't say he's been super impressive by any means. However, I would still consider him a must roster personally. Next, we have Immanuel Quickley from the Toronto Raptors. Now, Immanuel Quickley came in very, very cold this season, and a lot of people were ready to drop him. Maybe some of us came in here overrating Immanuel Quickley. For me, example, I thought Immanuel Quickley was going to be great this season. He's turned it back up recently. Now, Immanuel Quickley specializes in assists and steals, and he's been pretty good at that this season so far. On top of that, he's been great at three-point shooting. So yeah, honestly, Immanuel Quickley for me is a must roster guy. I don't think he's in that great tier, obviously, and I don't think he's just a streamer. I think he's a guy that you can hold on to rest of the season. Next, we have CJ McCollum of the Washington Wizards, and honestly, CJ has not been that great this season. Even in points leagues, he's been a little bit underwhelming, and he had a really slow start to the beginning of the season. Now, personally, I still think that I would trend him towards a must roster guy. Not quite at that streamer tier yet. He's just good enough to make it on that rosterable slot, but not bad enough in order for him to be a streamer, in my opinion. Doesn't really offer much outside of threes and points, so it's really hard for him to actually be useful in a category league. And yeah, in general, the Wizards team is not very good, so oftentimes when they get blown out, they do rest an older CJ McCollum over like a younger guy, for example. That's why CJ McCollum hasn't really been that great, partially because of a reduction in role, but also he's just getting older and probably a little bit more washed than he used to be. Next, we have Jalen Suggs, and honestly, Jalen Suggs has potential to get to the greats tier. However, currently, I'd still put him in the rosterable guys. And yeah, I know that's the fourth guy in the roster section, but Jalen Suggs, he does provide you some great defensive numbers. So in category leagues, he's very good. He's also a great passer, so the assist numbers are great there as well. And recently, he's been shooting the ball extremely well. When we look at Suggs' field goal percentages across the last few years, he's been shooting at around 41%. And this season, that has shot up to 47%. So Suggs' field goal percentage has been really great this season so far. I still think he probably needs a little bit more to reach the greats tier. Or maybe just a little bit more consistency. But I definitely think that you are happy to have Jalen Suggs on your roster. In category leagues, you'd probably be happier to have Jalen Suggs over the rest of the guys currently in this roster section. Next, we have Yegor Dillman of the Brooklyn Nets. And this is going to be our first streamer guy. Now, Yegor doesn't get that much playing time. In fact, a lot of the times, if he can get into the high 20s, it's really good. But we also have to weigh the amount of production that he can provide, right? And he's just not really providing that many assists, that many steals. It's all relatively underwhelming. We're talking about a guy who's shooting 38% from the field, and it's just really not efficient enough. And on top of that, a lot of the volume is going to guys like Michael Porter Jr. And when Cam Thomas eventually comes back, I'm sure some will go to him as well. So the opportunity isn't really there. And also in the beginning of the season, he was kind of juggling the role with Ben Saraff. Yegor Dillman, unfortunately, for me, is only a stream level guy. He's just simply not good enough to hold on for an entire slot for the entire week, especially if his schedule is terrible. So yeah, that's why Yegor Dillman, unfortunately, makes it into our streaming spot. Next, we have Dante DiVincenzo of the Minnesota Timberwolves. And the Timberwolves have one big advantage, and that's they love to play their starters a bunch of minutes. They don't like to dip into their bench. And Dante is a big benefactor of that. Because Dante's role is so secure, I'm going to have to put him into that roster slot. Dante doesn't really bring anything super special that you can't get from another guard. For example, he's great at threes, he's great at steals, but that's kind of what the point guard does already. Sometimes you might be able to find a streamer guy to supplement that value, but because the role is so consistent, he's basically a must hold. Next, we have Jeremiah Fears of the New Orleans Pelicans. Yeah, and unfortunately, this roster section is going to keep growing. Now, Jeremiah Fears came in kind of juggling time with Jordan Poole, and now Jordan Poole is actually back. Today, we're recording at December 15th, and Jordan Poole did play in the last game for the New Orleans Pelicans, and they both had around 27 minutes. Now, one big thing about Fears is that he can steal the ball. He's not great at other stats, but steals is still a very important category. Right now, he's shooting at 44.8% field goal percentage, and that's actually pretty good, especially when you compare it to someone like Jaeger Dillman, for example. I think the Pelicans also trust him a lot. For a rookie to come in and take that starting role ahead of a guy like Jordan Poole, who they just traded for, I think it says a lot about how much the organization values Fears as one of the members of their team. Now, I am obviously a little bit worried about DeJounte Murray coming in and maybe taking his spot. Then we would probably move him into a streamer slot. But until that happens, which won't be approximately early January, it seems, Fears is a guy that you should keep on your rosters for now. And I swear there isn't just one tier of players, guys, but Andrew Nembhard is also going to have to be on the just roster section. And the reason why is Andrew Nembhard has kind of underwhelmed, in my opinion. A lot of us expected him to take on a huge role, especially with Tyrese Halliburton being out. However, we have seen Andrew Nembhard operate under situations where Tyrese Halliburton was out before, and he didn't do that well. We've seen very volatile performances. We've seen huge assist games, bad, horrible shooting games. But this is a guy who can rack up assists. This is a guy who has a great opportunity because the Indiana Pacers do have a team that is extremely injured with their main star player out. Obviously, the early season injury probably affected his price as well, but right now I do think he's starting to come back into it a little bit more. In category leagues, he's currently ranked 117th. That is a must roster guy. Next, we finally have someone in a new category, and that's Darius Garland. Now, Darius Garland, I'm going to move into the greats. And I think a lot of people are angry and upset about Darius Garland because he had this injury and, there's this ramp up period. Then he's out again for another reason. And he's also just been underperforming, right? This guy is a buy low. And up until the last game that he just played, Darius Garland was not having a good season. A lot of us were worried that, hey, is it just the fact that he was recovering from an injury, that's why he's not playing that great? Remember when he broke his jaw? The season after, he played extremely poorly. Last season, he was very healthy and he played at an all-star level. When people ask me, should I sell Darius Garland? My main question is why? Because you're going to sell him at a low price, right? And not many other players are going to have the same potential and upside that Darius Garland has. We've seen him make 2 all-star teams. His performance is not a fluke. This is a great player. And I understand adapting to the situation season to season, but now with more and more injuries, we had Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Sam Merrill out, all at different times. Donovan Mitchell has been carrying such a large offensive load, and Darius Garland can really come in and probably help him out. Like, they need that offense. They need people to score the ball. I really think he can come in and turn it back around. So yeah, that's why Darius Garland makes the greats category for me. Next, we have De'Aaron Fox of the San Antonio Spurs. I think De'Aaron Fox almost can make the elite, but I'm not sure. I think I'm still going to put him at the greats. I think De'Aaron Fox is a great player. He's great at steals. He's great at assists. His field goal percentage is not bad for a guard. But yeah, he's been shooting at 48.8%. That's pretty efficient, especially since a lot of other guards are going to be not as efficient. But I do think he's probably a little bit better in points leagues. But honestly, we'll really have to see him perform next to Wemby a lot more. We haven't seen a huge sample size of those games and really see how the two mesh. And, does De'Aaron Fox lose a lot of value with Wemby getting more usage? I'm not too sure how much it will affect him. So we are going to need a little bit of evidence. There's nothing that De'Aaron Fox is currently doing that tells me he's really in the company of the elite. And, once that category fills out, you'll kind of understand why and the players around that elite area. There is a decent world of difference. Next, we have Deni Avdija of the Portland Trailblazers. And yes, this is because right now on the depth chart, Drew Holiday is out and Scoot Henderson is out. So we have Deni Avdija starting at the 1. And honestly, this might be a little bit controversial, but I think we're going to have to put Deni Avdija at the elite. Originally, if you told me when the season started, I would have put him in the greats. In fact, he wouldn't even be on this list at all. However, Danny can pass, he can rebound, he can score the ball. In category leagues, he's probably going to tank your free throws a little bit. He shoots it at typically around like the mid 70% at super high volume, especially this season. But this is a guy that can really kind of do it all. Sure, he's kind of lacking in the defensive stats, but all the other counting stats look great. In a points league, I'd imagine he's probably a little bit better, especially with the double-double and triple-double bonus threat. Honestly, in this kind of like middle range where it's great, almost pushing elite or elite pushing great. So that's kind of where I would have Danny Avdia. And if I find that this tier ends up being too full, I'd gladly just move Danny Avdia down. We can adjust as we go. Next, we have Devin Booker of the Phoenix Suns. Devin Booker has had a slow start to the season, and honestly, he's just been kind of unimpressive so far. However, I think he is going to turn it around, so I will maintain and put him in the elite. We're all familiar with who Devin Booker is, right? This is a guy who just 2 years ago was shooting 49% from the field. Now, in the past couple of seasons, he's been a little bit more efficient. Last season, he shot at 46%. And this season, he's shooting at 45.5%. The three-point percentage is also down, but we're slowly starting to see these numbers kind of come back up. So I'm not worried about Devin Booker. He was one of my buy lows, and I definitely think that people could have targeted him, especially while he was injured. On top of that, the injury wasn't very long-term, and he eventually came back for the game against the Lakers. So yeah, keep rolling with Devin Booker. Treat him as a top guy. Remember, this is someone who people drafted in the first round. I still think we should probably treat him as probably a mid-second rounder. But yeah, he definitely has the capability to still make it into that first round value. Now, Dyson Daniels is an interesting one because Dyson Daniels is currently replacing Trae Young as the point guard for the Atlanta Hawks, on the depth chart at least. He's definitely a guy who's better in category leagues because his steal rate is so high. But he's shown that in certain games, he can be a great rebounder. He can be a great passer. He's actually pretty efficient from the field. One of his biggest weaknesses, however, are his free throws, of course. I think last season he shot them at 50-something%. He's just never really been that great of a free throw shooter, but he doesn't really shoot it at super high volumes, so it helps a little bit. I do think that his value will probably drop when Trae Young comes back. He's almost too good to be just a roster guy, so I think I'm going to put him in the greats because of his specialty and the fact that many people were going to draft him in the 4th round of this year just for his steals alone in category leagues. Obviously, it depends on your situation, it depends on your build, it depends on your league type. But I think Dyson Daniels has really solidified him as a guy who can keep those steals numbers up, which is the whole reason why people were drafting him anyway. All right, next we have Jalen Brunson of the New York Knicks, and this is an obvious elite guy. Jalen Brunson, he's elite at passing, he's elite at free throws, he's elite at three-point shooting. He's the #1 guy on this Knicks team, and even if he isn't the best fantasy performer on this Knicks team, in my opinion, he's definitely one of the best point guards out there, and especially in a points league format, you're going to see a lot of benefit as well. Brunson is typically a second-round guy, so yeah, I would consider him to be one of the elites as well. Now, Kevin Porter Jr. has been an extremely great player so far, and it's going to be kind of hard to evaluate him because when he came back from his injury, he was honestly operating at an elite level. In fact, he was operating at a top 10 level. Especially now with Giannis out, do I want to put him in the greats or the roster? And I think we might have to put him in the greats. I think so. Kevin Porter Jr. has been shooting extremely efficiently so far this season. His assist numbers and his defensive stats are through the roof. This guy just has been an absolute blessing for this Bucks team, especially when they're severely lacking offensive power. Kyle Kuzma and Bobby Portis are obviously not the same players as they were before, and Miles Turner has been extremely underwhelming so far this season. It really has been these two guards in Ryan Rollins and Kevin Porter Jr. kind of running the show, obviously outside of the impact of Giannis. I think I'm going to need to see a little bit more consistency in order to consider him elite, but I will give him the respect that he deserves right now. With the current performances that he's had and the current opportunity that I see him getting. So as a result, I'm going to put him at the greats. Now, next, we have probably one of the most improved players this season, Keontae George. And honestly, one of the worst parts about Keontae George was the fact that his field goal percentage was so terrible in his rookie and sophomore years. However, this season, the assists have gone up, especially with Lauri Markkanen playing better. His own field goal percentage has shot up to around 44%, I believe. And so, honestly, he's going to have to be a part of the greats. Keontae George is really developing into a great NBA player, but the free throw shooting has been great this season. I almost kind of view him as a Fred VanVleet type, just potentially not very efficient from the field, but this guy can pass, he can get steals. You could even argue that his current field goal percentage is better than Fred VanVleet. And currently he's only 22 in his third year. I can see improvements, with maybe better personnel around him. I think Keontae George is going to develop into a great player. Currently on this Utah Jazz team, he's operating at 28% usage. So I would consider him probably a little bit better in points leagues than in category leagues. But nonetheless, if you drafted Keontae George, he was probably some guy that you were just hoping gave you some assists and maybe was a negative in field goals, if you were punting. Now he's been less of a detriment in that category, and he's just been so good this season. Okay, honestly, I say all this, and then I look at the rest of the people at the grades, and I think I'm going to have to drop Keontae George into the roster tier. I think I was getting a little too ahead of myself. Keontae George has been great this season, but I wouldn't really say that he's been at the level of De'Aaron Fox or Darius Garland. So yeah, let's just adjust that accordingly real quick. That was my mistake. But yeah, he is kind of more of a specialist kind of guy, similar to a lot of these other guys in the roster tier. They're very good at certain skills, like Peyton Pritchard is good at threes. Jalen Suggs is good at blocks, etc. But they all do have a little bit of a weakness. LaMelo Ball of the Charlotte Hornets. Unfortunately for LaMelo, I think I'm going to have to slide him in at the greats. And typically LaMelo Ball, when he is on, he is on. He can be an elite guy. He could be a first rounder. This guy can rebound. He can pass. He can do everything. Obviously, he's not that efficient, but injuries have obviously affected him. And his availability has just been terrible so far. He is a guy that I typically would want to avoid at all costs. I wouldn't really want to trade for him unless I was desperate, and I wouldn't really want to draft him. I would let someone else kind of take that. Risk, and you'll probably still find players around him that are close to productive as long as they're healthy. It is a shame because LaMelo Ball is such a great talent, and it's kind of hard to hear people talk so much smack about him, because he's such an electric player when he's on the court and when he's actually playing. This guy can be a triple-double threat, and the way he plays is just so carefree. So yeah, unfortunately, because of injuries, I'm gonna have to slide him at the greats. For the Mavericks, we have Ryan Nembhard Jr., and unfortunately, Ryan Nembhard, you are going to the streamer tier. The reason being is because there's still currently a point guard battle in Dallas. We have Brandon Williams, we had D'Lo in the beginning of the season, and now we have Ryan Nembhard Jr. And it looks like they're continuing to split the minutes around those, low to mid 20s marks, and it's just not enough for me to really consider him a must roster throughout the weeks. So I will keep him as a streaming option. Amen Thompson of the Houston Rockets currently is playing at the 1, with Reed Shepherd not in the starting lineup, of course. The Rockets choosing to start Josh Okogie at the 2. We have Amen operating at the 1. Now, I don't think Amen is quite in that elite tier just yet. He has been better than he was at the beginning of the season, but I'd love to see a little bit more consistency. He does absolutely rack up defensive stats and counting stats in general. But yeah, so far this season, we've wanted to see a little bit more. And I can't, in good conscience, really put him in the same level of a Jalen Brunson, for example. So unfortunately, we're going to have to slide him in the greats. Next, we have Cade Cunningham of the Detroit Pistons. And this is another guy that's going to slide into the elite tier. Cade is probably the closest player to being in that top 5 range. And when we talk about the top 5, we understand that that's a couple of these guys, but it also includes Giannis, Luka, and Wemby. And Cade is right there. He was typically drafted around that number 6 spot, but one of his weaknesses is turnovers. So if you are in a category league and you draft Cade Cunningham, you're probably looking to punt that turnover category to begin with. However, for example, in a points league, he can absolutely rack up counting stats. He is a constant triple-double threat. Some days he's not that efficient, obviously, but Cade is most definitely a first-round guy. He can have absolutely huge games, and the Detroit Pistons look better than ever. I don't really see them slowing down, and he's also extremely young, so I can only see him getting better throughout the years. He is probably the number 1 guy, even more likely than Anthony Edwards to enter that top 5 spot. Next, we have Davion Mitchell of the Miami Heat. And Davion Mitchell, honestly, I would consider him a roster guy. I think he is probably the closest to a streamer guy. However, it looks like they are going to continue to roll with Davion Mitchell. He is a guy who can rack up assists, absolutely. But now with Hero back and introducing Norm Powell, a lot of the usage is probably going to not be with Davion. I personally still consider Davion Mitchell as a must roster guy. With such low usage, you could probably consider him less in points leagues, but he's a guy that's going to have a consistent role throughout the rest of the season, so I don't mind holding on to him. Next, we have Ja Morant of the Memphis Grizzlies, and Ja Morant has had a lot of issues throughout this entire season so far. Even last season, he was one of the guys that ended up having some minutes cut because of how the coach allocated the minutes for some reason. I still think that Ja Morant is probably one of the greats. Now, previously, he probably would have been in that elite tier. We saw how explosive he could be, but it does look like he might have lost a little bit of the explosiveness. I'm not too sure. It looks like he can absolutely still jump. We saw that dunk attempt the other day, and he looked like he could absolutely get height. I don't think Ja Morant is as bad as people think. And on that Grizzlies team, when he's playing, he's commanding 30 plus usage. In a points league, he's going to be great. He's a guy who can also rack up a bunch of assists, a bunch of steals, and he can absolutely score the ball. You know, I really hope that he gets into a better situation where he can return to his former glory, because he is a very, very electric player. And we all saw that the Grizzlies were the 2 seed with him leading the charge. So there's no question in my mind that he can be one of these elite guys. All right, next we have Jamal Murray of the Denver Nuggets. And honestly, originally, I probably had Jamal Murray as one of the greats, but I think I'm finally ready to move Jamal Murray to the elite. With Michael Porter Jr. gone, Jamal Murray has just been incredible. Yeah, this is a guy who's honestly pickable at the end of the first round, early second round. He's currently ranked 14th in category leagues, and it doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon. Obviously, I do think the shooting is a little bit high. You know, he does have slightly inflated field goal numbers compared to previous seasons, slightly inflated three-point shooting, but this is also a guy who is just going to get guaranteed usage. He's going to score the ball. He can give you defensive stats. He can pass, and also he gives you great free throw percentages. So yeah, Jamal Murray, I genuinely think is an elite guy. Obviously, there is a bit of a gap between him and Cade, for example, but I think still that the gap between Cade and the other guys is still a little bit too large for him to kind of escape that category. I still think the gap between Cade and the other guys in the best tier are a little bit too large for him to really make it into that category just yet. So unfortunately, he is going to be stuck here. But Jamal Murray has made a great leap so far this season. In my opinion, Jamal Murray definitely should be an all-star this season. He's been playing so well. And yeah, there's not much more to say. He's been incredible. Next, we have James Harden, who we're also going to put in the elite tier. This is a guy who is also consistently could be a triple-double threat. Some days he just decides to grab a ton of boards. He's also one of the best ball facilitators in the game. He's also one of the best steals guys in the game. I think he was second in deflections behind Dyson Daniels last season. Someone can fact check me on that, but I think it was at some point during the season at least. We know what Harden can do. He can shoot, he can make threes. Obviously, he has some turnover problems and whatnot, but he's a great player. He's been leading this Clippers team and leading the offense. Even though he's admitted that he wants to take a backseat, Harden is just a complete beast. And honestly, like as someone who was a Warriors fan back in the Golden Age, Harden was one of the most annoying players to watch. We all know about the foul baiting, but obviously now you kind of learn to grow and understand how truly great he is. So I do have a lot of respect for James Harden as a player. Next, we have Russell Westbrook. And honestly, Russell Westbrook is probably going to make my streamers tier. And the reason why is because in category leagues, he's probably going to slash a lot of your efficiency. Sure, Russell Westbrook does give you a lot of counting stats. He can give you defensive stats at times. But turnovers, free throws, field goals are all going to continue to be issues. He's definitely a lot better in a points league, especially with those triple-double and double-double bonuses. But unfortunately, just because he's only really good in one league and not so good in the other, I have to put him in my streamer tier. Next, we have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the Oklahoma City Thunder, and he is undoubtedly one of the best players in the game. He's hyper efficient, he's a great defender, he can give you blocks, he can give you steals as a guard. You know, obviously he's not passing the ball at the volume as some of these other guys, But when it comes to free throws, when it comes to field goal percentage, he's super efficient in all of these and has such high volume that he's impacting these categories a lot more. He's definitely one of the guys where it's like you would have to get an egregious package in order to want to trade him away. So yeah, Shea is just one of them guys. He is one of one. He also does everything at a very, very low turnover rate, which just makes it even more impressive. So yeah, I know some people are frustrated with his play style, but when he's on your fantasy team, you can't help but appreciate his game and appreciate how much value he brings because it truly is amazing. Next, we finally have Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors. This is the best player of my favorite team, and we're going to slide him in the elite tier. Obviously, he's lost a step, but he can still score. Quite possibly could be the only good player outside of Jimmy Butler on this Warriors team that is even rosterable in fantasy. Great threes, steals, he can pass the ball, elite free throws. Curry can do it all, man. Not only is he a great offensive player in real life, but even in fantasy, he continues to be great at his older age. Obviously, the downside is the fact that he probably misses back-to-backs for rest, and he's had a couple of injuries so far this season that might worry some people, but we all know what he can do when he produces. Honestly, I feel like last year he was a lot worse. So this year, I think you're getting a good deal rostering Steph Curry. Next, we have Tyrese Maxey of the 76ers, and we can start seeing some of these categories even out a little bit. Maxey we will put into the elite tier as well. Tyrese Maxey has been the beneficiary of playing, a lot of minutes under Nick Nurse. The efficiency has gotten a lot better this season. I remember last season when I was watching him, a lot of times the double teams would pressure him, but with having guards like VJ Edgecombe, it is relieving a little bit of that defense all hounding him, for example. The three-point shooting has improved, the field goal percentage has improved, and honestly, I think that Sixers team has a lot better personnel, right? Last season with Paul George signing and getting injured almost immediately with that hyperextended knee, it just didn't look good. And Joel Embiid not being available as well. Now, after a season of tanking, does look like he has a lot more help. And yeah, Tyrese Maxey is absolutely thriving. He's definitely put himself into first round conversations for next year. We'll kind of see how it develops. I did think that he was a bit of a sell high, especially considering how hot he was coming into the beginning of the season. I do think he has cooled down just a tiny bit, but not enough to kick him out of the first round just yet. After Maxey, we have Luka Doncic, and without a doubt, he is going into the same tier as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And honestly, you can consider Luka to be better than Shai in points leagues. He is going to get that double-double and triple-double bonus a lot more often. He's probably going to put up more shots. He's probably going to give you that three-point bonus more often. But yeah, there really isn't that much that I need to say about Luka. He's just an incredible player who can just put up plenty of points, plenty of stats in one night. Obviously, his main weakness are the defensive stats that you aren't going to get as opposed to a Shai, and also the fact that he's more turnover prone. But honestly, you can't really complain when you're getting one of the best players in the league. And finally, we have Josh Giddey. Now, Josh Giddey is also one of these players that is a big triple-double threat. He also has jumped a lot of tiers, and honestly, I'm willing to put him in the elite, and which means I'm probably going to have to drop Deni Avdija to the greats. I do think that Deni Avdija is slightly worse than Josh Giddey. I wouldn't say they're both the same player, but they're both guys who can get assists, who can get rebounds. In points leagues, they're very good because of that double-double and triple-double bonus that I keep mentioning. But I do think that Josh Giddey is just that more consistent. He is a bit better. And honestly, Josh Giddey is just more efficient. I do think Giddey is better from the field. He's better at shooting it from three, even though the volume isn't quite there for him. He's better at getting steals, rebounds, assists. He's slightly weaker in free throws, but honestly, Deni Avdija could be right there with him. He did start off the season shooting really well from the free throw line. But it's starting to come down a little bit. So yeah, I think Deni Avdija can definitely make his way up to the elite tier, but it really doesn't seem that right to move him up to that tier just quite yet. So yeah, that concludes the tier list of all the starting point guards in the NBA in fantasy basketball. Let me know if you want to see this for other positions or which guys you might disagree with replacements in. Let me know because I'm very, very open to discussion. That's what I like talking about. I like to talk about fantasy basketball and just basketball in general. So please let me know your thoughts. Let me know what I can improve on these videos. And as always, have a great day and good luck in your leagues.